Okay. Welcome everyone to the Spiritist Society of Richmond. This is message 12 from the book The Way, the Truth, and the Life. And the title is Education in the Home. You too do what you have seen your father do. Jesus 8:38. In today's world, education giving free hand to the human instinct is encouraged. The old teachings involve developing one's character in the home are being forgotten little by little. Nevertheless, society will be compelled to readjust its purpose sooner or later. Human parents must be the individual's first mentors. Setting up the right environment depends on their loving mission. In today's untouchable society, corrupt environments point to the fact that there are bad parents mixed in with those who, at the cost of a huge sacrifice, are able to maintain as much security as possible against the threat of disorder. The domestic endeavor can never be released valve for unproductive pleasures because it constitutes working and cooperate with God. The man and woman who try to be parents while at the same time enjoying the pleasures of earthly life are blind, and they will finish their insanity at 40. Spirituality is speaking in the common grave of uselessness. In vain to sociologists strive to replace education in the home with unintelligible substitutes which only poison the soul. Only a spirit that has understood the parenthood of God above all is able to escape the law that says that children will always imitate their parents, even if the parents are wicked. Let us have Christian's word, and if you have children, take the master statement as a warning.
So let's get started with a prayer. All of us. Let's close our eyes. Take a comfortable position wherever you are. Dear Mother, Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to be together today. We thank you for the blessings of this life, for all the opportunities we have to not only learn, but also to apply the teachings we received today, for the blessings of the Spiritist doctrine, to apply them in every direction, in every action, in every thought, in every circumstances of our lives. We dedicate our studies today to those who have their names in the book of prayer. We pray that the good spirits who are with us can help them, reaching them in their homes, wherever they are in the world, granting them the same environment of peace, of calmness and serenity that we experience here. Dear God, we ask you today for your protection, and with your permission, we begin our studies today. All right, how's everybody doing? Such a beautiful day. put aside our wonderful message. As in April, we are finally going to start our classes for children next week. So it's a beautiful message, a beautiful reminder. Oops. I'm going to move this a little bit so I can look at the folks a little bit better. But today we're going to continue our studies of the Spirit's book. Many things happen in this around today. Today is when this first goes live, when we're together, is April 2nd. And I posted the calendar, not here, but also online in the emails, so that you can read the chapters before you come in. We're going to address all of the laws, but of course I don't have time to go through the entirety of each chapter. So the encouragement from the mentors is that we go and read. We should read the book every so often, so we can remind ourselves. So don't rely just on my interpretation. Don't rely on just the two little snippets that we are able to do. But on Friday, we remind ourselves that March 31st, 1858 was when the first reported case in the United States of New York came about, which is the Fox Sisters event. So that's 10 years before the publication of the Spirit's book, roughly 10 years. Those are the events that set a cascade of events to start spiritualism that eventually crossed the pond, crossed the Atlantic to Europe. And that's later when Kardec gets to know of the events, the tables, but starts in the U.S. Just a reminder that wherever you are in the world, Spiritism is not a monopoly of anybody. The superior spirits, multiples from different regions, gave the message. Kardec put it together. Kardec was French. He spoke many languages. He was also someone who gave a lot for us to be here. Just as today's Palm Sunday, next week will be Easter. Our Master also gave so much for us to be here today. And then April 1st is when we dedicate the day for the foundation of the Spiritist Society of Paris, or Parisian Spiritist Society. We're the first Spiritist center in the world by Kardec. All of these are available on FAB, the United States Spiritist Federation. And just as our brothers and sisters in other religions, we need to dedicate some of our time to study those aspects and be reminded of our own history. Because it's important to know where we came from in order to know where we're going. And today, April 2nd, is the anniversary of the birth of Chico Xavier, which is the medium who exemplifies to us what it is to be a true Christian in a world where he renounced all the material pleasures that we indulge in each and every day to be able to bring us the teachings that we have in his books. He also have many people who tell stories about being around him. And every time in my own mind, the events that I need to learn something, I remember that even Chico Xavier had to give up having higher education, a better job. Even one day he was given a piano and he was happy that he was going to be able to learn. And Manuel said, no, you need to focus on the books. And that's us, right? Well, we want to learn this, we want to do that, we want to do that. No, we need to solve for simplicity and focus on, because once a week, twice a week, as we meet is not enough to know everything that we need to know in this life. So in our private lives, we're encouraged by the mentors to dedicate that time to study in depth all the Spiritist doctrine. There are, I think, there's at least over 100 books in English, so there's enough excuse. There's no more excuse. Even though we're a little bit delayed, and that's what the Spiritist movement. There's a difference between the Spiritist movement and the Spiritism. The Spiritist movement is made of us, and we make decisions. And those who have the power make decisions, and hopefully we'll continue to pray that more content comes so we can explore the content. And meanwhile, we'll use what we have and we'll translate what we can. And that comes hand in hand with this chapter, which is the law of preservation. So we're going to share because sharing is caring. It just takes a couple of clicks. And the law of preservation is an interesting law in this book. It comes after the law of reproduction, which we're going to focus on studying another time. But today we're going to focus on the law of preservation. That is divided in different parts. Now, by now we know where in the Spirit's book the laws are, right? Which part? Three. There are 4 parts. Third part is just the divine laws. And in these times of consumerism and busyness as in I want to do everything right now, overbook, overschedule, the law of preservation talks, part of the law is about necessary and superfluous, not the words needs versus wants. Because we would like to, we ideally would all speak French, so we could read the Kardec books in French. We would all speak Greek, so we can read the Old Testament in Greek. So we don't have to rely on translation and different ways of translating. There's no nefarious stuff going on in translation, especially of the New Testament. But there are different views because every 10 years they revise the language of all. So nobody's maliciously translating things so that it can be that way. The translations are very different. But imagine if you could read it in the original. Then you want to learn Hebrew, so you can read the Old Testament. And then, you don't want to maybe speak English, which is the current universal language, just like the Greek was back then in times of Jesus. So the law of preservation talks about the instinct of self-preservation, meaning you and I are given life. And then within us, and all living beings, not just us, living beings have the instinct of self-preservation. And it's innate in us to know that we need to continue to be alive. Then it talks about not the instinct, so there is a need, but so the means, how we get, if we have the need to be alive, how God allows us to be in the world. So it talks about using things of the world, and we're not talks about enjoyment of material things, necessary versus superfluous. For a moment, I could read my handwriting. Voluntary privations and mortification. So it's interesting because when I say to you we're going to study the law of preservation, you don't think that spirits are going to guide him to organize in this way. Because in the age of consumerism, focusing on the material, I want to travel, I want to enjoy, I want my Instagram photo, I want this fashion, I want, it's very easy for us to say, oh, but God said, enjoy the fruits of the earth. And he addresses the enjoyment of things within boundaries. There are boundaries, and the boundaries of knowing what's enough, it's up to each one of us, but it's the same as if you eat too much, you don't feel good. It's innate in you to know that you've eaten too much, that you've consumed too much, or you haven't, slept too much, you have to sleep less or sleep a little bit more. So there is a balance within us that, because the laws are inscribed in our conscience. It's just a matter of, in this life, we awaken to hear and listen. And that's what the importance of meditation, self-knowledge, question 919 of the Spirit book. And it's not just Spiritism. Even in the New Testament, Paul brought to us that we need to be in this world, we're not of this world, or be conformed to this world, but transformed by it. Jesus didn't have a lot. Paul lost everything when he chose to follow Jesus. He was wealthy. Divaldo keeps nothing for himself. Chico Xavier didn't keep nothing for himself. And so who are we to just focus on having more, having bigger houses. And that goes hand in hand with the message about education, right? To teaching the next generation what's important, leaving those principles so that they're resilient when they go out. and they compare. Because we all remember wanted to have the newest fashion and we couldn't. So now I know we may go to the pendulum and give them everything, but then the earth can't accompany. So as we talk about these issues, we remind ourselves of the laws. Then we need to think about ourselves in the context of everything. These are some of the aspects of ourselves. So this is you in the middle. And I didn't put in the our friends, the discarnate friends. It's not very easy to represent spirit enveloped with our spirit connected to physical body. That's not something that I've seen very well represented. If you are out there, let me say this to the camera. If you're out there watching this and you can read this part of the Spirit's book, question 175, if I'm not mistaken, go read that part and make a beautiful graph for the Spiritist so we can make it maybe an animated graph, make something that it's very difficult because we don't know the details. We know things here and there, right? We know from the book Missionaries of the Light that Sigismund shrinks his spiritual body to be like a baby. And then the moment the egg and the sperm come together to form a zygote, he's magnetically attracted to it. And then his spirit's mind now moves cell by cell by cell. It's a little bit out of the bounds of what we can imagine because we are not superior spirits guiding that process, but it's cell by cell. So here's you in the middle. You have the spirit, physical body. And then our friends were here, we don't see them, or maybe we see them. They lack a physical body. So the interaction between us and them usually happens per spirit. There's also where you retain the memories of your previous lives. There's also how we can do respond to mediumistic or manifest mediumistic activities as well. And all of those dimensions, I didn't put in the psychological dimension, your mind, the spirit's mind, controlling the perispirit that controls the body. That's one the reason this Evolution to Worlds book says. Your mind is a spirit, controls each and every cell of the perispirit that controls the physical body. So everything that happens in us, in our physical body, usually starts in the mind. Starts on the actions of the past that may lead us to guide each and every way. And that happens through years, billions of years into internships in other kingdoms. Because right now you're not thinking about all the enzymatic reactions that each and every cell of your body is doing. You're not thinking about the blood cells that are being born, the blood cells that are being returned. You're not saying heart, breathe, beat faster. So you can control your breathing, for sure. You can control certain things consciously, but the majority of everything, you're not saying break lipids, break proteins, absorb amino acids to your stomach. Actually, you're helping and be helped by the bacteria that lives and the viruses that live within and outside of us. All to say that preservation of the self instinct has happened in other kingdoms until we could come here. It also gives us a perspective on how to treat the friends who are in other kingdoms on this earth right now, so they can have an easier time. And as we progress, those relationships get stronger. We change what we know, we improve, so on and so. So each and every law can be applied to the different dimensions of our lives. And it's up to you and I to know how God wants us to apply that to our daily lives today. And the quote I had was, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect." That's in Romans 12. This self-preservation instinct, in question 702, the Spirit says self-preservation is a law of nature and all living beings possess it. So everything in nature you see that is working, I want to say fighting, some are fighting, but working, laboring to survive. You see, when you walked in here, we have those beautiful flowering bushes, and the birds are there collecting and they could seek shelter. They do everything. Is the definition of being alive. They do the same things that they do physically speaking. But why do we have this self-instinct? In the spirit say all beings, so there is a self-instinct. What's the purpose of having it? Because it could just exist, right? But God doesn't make anything that is useless. So there's a reason why you strive to self-preserve. He says all beings must collaborate in the designs of providence. God has given us the need to be alive. So the simplest organizational form on the planet, an atom, an electron, the gluons, and all the things that go low. I was going to say a virus, but the atoms that compose the elements of the virus are smaller. Every single thing has a purpose. Even if we don't know what it is, we look around, it's like, what is the purpose? Then we can even go back to the law of destruction and even find a reason for the wars. And we see in this chapter, there's also a part about what happens. I won't touch on it, but it talks about what is the purpose in some people's lives. Even though Earth can produce everything, there's still that scarcity. Their lives are scarce of physical material comforts that we have. And in places like where we are, which are wealthy, then there's a lack of emotional, psychological fulfillment, put it that way, your health, enjoyment. So are we good so far with having that? Do you feel you have that? And it's very visible if you don't have things, if you don't have your basic needs met. You go to Maslow hierarchy, which is not really a pyramid, it's more like a donut type of situation. And then if you have your basic needs met, then it's less, it may be less flourished. When you're just fighting to survive, it's more just like a gazelle running from a cheetah. That's the instinct of self-preservation is very acute and visible. As we grow in the scale of the world and the evolution, then our instinct is still there, but now we're also able to work on other things instead of just surviving. And as we are in this world, but not of this world, because our true home is the spiritual realm, the spirits discuss enjoyment of material things. So as a summary, it says the use of the fruit of the earth is a consequence of the need to stay alive. Because I do ask, what are the fruits of the earth? The fruits of the earth is everything that we have available to us in nature, and the things that we change, manipulate around, depending on the technology we have. But everything that you see, it comes from a modification of the universal cosmic fluid that in its turn is what God's give us. So we're co-creators in a lesser plane at the moment. Spirits like Jesus are co-creator in higher planes. So that would be question and answer 7:11. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying the things that are listed on the side. From the flowers that we plant, but we don't create. Unless you are in the business of creating hybridization, you create varieties of flowers. There are spirits who care for the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. But we have, things. We have things that give us shelter, that helps us with this change in temperature, cold, hot, cold, hot. Cars, blessed are the cars that bring us to and from the Spiritist Center. And, in this case, I put an iPhone, but I didn't create the camera. I purchased it. I worked in a different sector of society, and someone else fulfilling their duty created the technology. So it's a tool that the same way it can be used for good, it can be used for non-good. So many lives have been saved with radiation treatments. radiation itself, like an X-ray. You go and take an X-ray and they diagnose pneumonia. And then the other pendulum is a bomb, right? A bomb that can be devastating. So technology itself, things in and of themselves are not evil in a sense. Otherwise, God wouldn't allow it, because God doesn't do anything that's not useful. Yet we enjoy things. That is for our need to stay alive, in other words, because of our self-preservation. But also God made things enjoyable, agreed? Next week, we're going to have an egg hunting for the children. And they're going to have enjoyable things to play with and to consume. And if you are going to join us, we're going to have a potluck lunch, so we'll each bring one thing to share and enjoyment together. So the next set of questions has to do with, towards what end has God made the enjoyment of material things attractive? It says to drive humans to fulfill their missions and also to test them with temptations. And what is the purpose of such temptation? To develop their reason so they may learn to keep themselves from excess. Right? Because if it was just for the need to be alive, think about when someone loses their will to live, or if they are slowly being afflicted by depression. They may consume things, but then slowly the enjoyment of those things is what's lacking, that will to continue is what's lacking. You know, the instinct of self-preservation, because if nothing is enjoyable, why stay? And the enjoyment of things is built inside of you, from your nervous system into the hormones that are the neurotransmitter and the hormones that flow through us. We enjoy things. And that's when the self-discipline comes. We're talking about discipline. The discipline to be here, the discipline to wake up, do your things, drive, the discipline to study, there's not enough. Can't say you brush your teeth once and you're done for life. You exercise once, you're done for life. You read the spiritual book once, you're done for life. That doesn't exist. You have to do it every so often. Because what you are today is not what you were 10 years ago. Even physically speaking, you're not the same. In a sense, there's not a single drop of your blood that is the same, because you renew of yourself. We thank God, because then we can get better. We can stagnate, but hopefully we are better than we are. So we learn to be from temptation. And that's what we say, and these are said in different parts of the Spirit's book. What if you're born in wealth? There's nothing wrong. There's people in the world with billions of dollars. It's what they do of the wealth. And some are doing really good. If you read the books and the interviews, they teach their children to see wealth as a loan from God. They may not use those words. That's not the words that Bill Gates, for example, would use. But there are other people who are more religious who use those words. It's not that you all of a sudden win the lottery. Some are the opposite. Just say, no, I have everything. It's to enjoy. And it's more about how do I teach them the responsibility, because it's very easy when you have the resources for people to come to you with the wrong intentions. So the instinct of self-preservation is clear, because if you eat too much, you don't feel good. If you use drugs, you're not going to do well. If you never have the need to work, not work, I'm not talking about sending people to salt mines. I'm talking about just having something that fulfills your purpose in the world. That's why it's so important, the conversation we have now about people, what to do when you retire, what to do while you're waiting to retire, because when you're not doing something, you decay, in a sense. You see people tell me, when I retire, I'll come to the center, when my kids are in college. And then what are we going to do? Sit on a hammock and every day and read a book? It's going to be nice for 3 months. Then again, get bored. We need to be laboring. We need to be working, even if it's volunteering here or elsewhere, because that's what keeps your mind. Because if you stop studying, stop reading, all you do is enjoy, you're not going to last long. And we see people, there are plenty of examples in the Spiritist movement of people who said that. And then they get diagnosed with a terminal disease and die, because because they're not being productive, the moment you stop producing. But there's this temptation. So when you are poor, you have different temptations. The temptation of the projects downtown may be for the kid to join the gang. When in the other side of town, the temptation is laziness. We have everything, we give them, and we work hard to give everything, and there's no motivation. So there's got to be a balance somewhere in between. When some have too much, others don't have, they are unable to fulfill their duties. It's all the law of society dictates to do. We are in interaction. That's why the hoarding of resources is a problem. Not the physical hoarding of having things, which is problematic, but like the resources, the best schools, the best education activities, while others have nothing. There's got to be a way we can reach that divide. And do we have bounds? Meaning, do we have boundaries? Should we just be enjoying forever? It says, do enjoyments have bounds traced by nature? Yes. To show you the limit of what's necessary, but through excesses, you bring on society, but and thus you punish yourself. So he was talking about, when you indulge in something too much, you don't feel good. Everything is in nature is problematic. If you don't sleep, if you sleep too much. If you don't eat, or if you eat too much. If you don't exercise, you exercise too much. If you drink too much water, is a problem, even though you're made of 70% of water. If you only drink water, you get unbalanced on your electrolytes. Or if you don't drink enough water, getting unbalanced is very common to happen, when you get older. It's harder for your body to do that chemical. And I think I just copied, unfortunately, the bottom question came the same, but that's okay. Just a matter of teaching ourselves to be that it's okay to enjoy. We enjoy this space. Great. It's a physical location that we worked hard to have. We did things to it. We clean. We take care of it. That's perfectly fine. It also serves as a outpost for the spirits to help those who are discarnating. Which one day could be us. That's why we do this, right? Out of self-centeredness. But one day we will be able, hopefully, to come back to those who come behind and tell them, help them, assist them the same way the spirits are helping and assisting us. And there's a big discussion here on necessary versus superfluous. So can we know the limit of what's necessary? And the spirit answer, those who are sensible know it by intuition, but mainly recognize it at the cost of their own experience. Do you know in your life what is necessary versus what's superfluous? I'm going to get that quote, or as you think about those questions. But that's question and answer 175. And then it will go into talking about people on the earth who control everything, again, concentrating the resources but don't spread. There's a whole conversation in these chapters, very interesting. It's a different point of view from 1850s. So there's some takes that it's kind of like when you read the Old Testament, you have to understand that they're in an ancient context, speaking an ancient language, living with different customs. But it talks a lot about the earth being able to produce everything. That's a concern that we have from time to time. And the spirits hint to the fact that the reason we have inequalities is because we are not allocating things properly. That's why we are still a world of trials and expiations, because there's still children going to bed hungry every night. People going without health care, people going without house. And then we go to look at Long Solar, which is one step above the lower zones. There's no homelessness in Long Solar. There's no lack of health. Nobody. André Luiz was like, okay, we care for you. Here's your bill. Of course, we have systems. We have to learn new system. We will, and in the work, posthumous works, and there's some works on this Spiritist magazine as well. The spirits tell us, spirits from higher realms will return, and they give the boost of ideas that we need. to reinvent ourselves in new systems of economic development. Right now we have a system of exchange. We have ideas that are, during COVID, we got checks out to people, so we could exist because it was earthly thing. We have the sharing of ideas. This is something new. When I was in science, you just do it in your lab, doing your thing. Now working healthcare, nobody funds you if you're doing it by yourself anymore. It needs to be collaborative, which means also we need to share with the public the identified data set. So the public, I mean, all the scientists from elsewhere, they can tap in and verify what you did. What does that bring? Efficiency. Because now, instead of 2 grants for 2 people doing separate things, same thing separately, then they need to work together, or you just don't fund twice what you already know works or doesn't work, which is the other important thing that is happening, the encouragement of publication of negative. So if you tried a drug for diabetes and it didn't work, we want to know, because that's taxpayer money. So somewhere else, someone doesn't do it again. That's changed within my lifetime, my career, only 2 decades. That's a big change. Those are people who are coming and leading institutions. And we talk about the politicians and leaders like they're evil. Some are. There's all kinds of people everywhere in society. But then there will be a time where Van Gogh will return, Mozart will return, Ben Franklin, all the guys who did all those inventions and things that pushed us, they will all return in a more public way, right? Because if you have a project like Bach returning, everybody's gonna know. But there are the spirits. It's all in the books of it's in posthumous works, but also in the book Planetary Transition by Divaldo, for example. He describes after the spirits coming and helping during the earthquake and tsunami, and how later there were spirits from other globes higher coming back to different invisible. There's the invisible work of the good everywhere in the world. We don't see people who are not, that we have the instinct of preservation, but we're not fighting to have the highest salary, the most profits. And then we look around the destruction of the earth that comes with it, right? Thousands of years we're doing this. At some point, there will be a lever. God's going to be like, okay, now it's enough. We are not, we are collecting the seeds, we're harvesting what we planted. But the instinct of self-preservation occurs, but if we are more equal, or not equal, but like if we're more the level playing, we all have food, we all have shelter. It's a dream. That's how it is. And also, there's only one colony that I mentioned because that's the one we know the most. Over 1 million inhabitants. Everybody prays at 6. Do you know any place on the earth everybody prays at 6 together? Probably small congregations, small places. You can go to Kardec Creator. There's a prayer every day at 6 p.m. It's the hour of Mary. Because that's what keeps the vibrational attunement. That's why Kardec talks about self-preservation in the book, the medium's book and the bylaws. That's on our bylaws as well. Is that there was a right to have the members, have people register. There was membership, so you could support the rent and everything. But there was also the right to kick people out, because he knew you need their harmony. If people come and the spirits who are coming with them or themselves are against the ideals of the Christ, they don't need to stay. They can go and be against Christ somewhere else. That's the instinct of self-preservation within an organization. Right? We take away, it's like when the weed grows, and the weeds feed a lot of animals. If something is creating attrition, then we can say, well, we're not ready. And I'm talking about Kardec is because, we tend to celebrate a lot of, we'll talk about Kardec in the Spirit's book on April 18th, which is 13th. 16th is Sunday. April 18th is when the book was published. But we are going to meet on a Sunday. But in an also law, for example, the same example, the vampire woman comes. She's suffering, but the workers go, and Angela is like, oh my, felt bad for her, right? Compassion. Oh my God, this one. He's like, the guy says no, she would be the disturbance to our works. When she's ready, she may be received in the rectification chambers, which is the way to come in, right? If you're suffering, you go through treatment, and the person caring for the gates says, no, don't you worry. Divine Providence will care for her in a different configuration. And that's the same thing we have here is with the selection of spirits who come in, the magnetic defenses. It's not that we don't want to help everybody, we do. But then the spirits are like, you're not ready to receive help. You're going to create more trouble. And that happens to us nowadays. How many times we go to some place and there's a rule and you fight over it, you don't like it. That's us hindering the progress of that institution. It's good. It's good to know that you have this instinct of preservation inside of ourselves. That includes taking care of ourselves, having the minimum to live, exercising, eating, hygiene. Think about it. No books of Andrea Louise or Emmanuel show spiritual callings that are elevated, that aren't organized, led by people of high moral values. They have institutions, they have buildings, they have departments, people in charge. And then there's a time to learn, to lead, and a time to learn to follow. And the gardens are manicured. The flowers have different colors and shines and smells, and people are clean. The only place they some disorganizations in lower zone, but even there are organizations organized against Christ, where people don't shower, don't have food, they're homeless. That's a lower zone, or the earth too. So that's a good way to think of all the dimensions in your life where you have that instinct, and how can we have a little bit less, so others can have a little bit. Cool. Questions or comments? Like I said, we will address part of this chapter, not everything. Now I encourage you to go to second nugget, like highlights, spoiler alert kind of thing, because we want to encourage you to go and read for yourself. We already studied it here, but every year we want to study it again. And maybe one of you can do it. Is 1,019 questions, 365 days. How many questions a day you have to read? It's like with the Bible, right? There's plans of study to read the Bible a year. So 1,019. I'll use the calculator. 3 or 4 a day, and you read the book, the whole book. Doesn't take but 5 to 10 minutes a day. So when someone says, "Oh my God, you want me to read this?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." Instead of scrolling on Instagram for half an hour, go read a few questions of the Spirit's book. You can read them. I would recommend to read them in order, so you know which ones you've read before. Or if you want to read them at random, just have a highlighter with it. And once you read them, you highlight the questions, just the number of the whole book. And then if you open it again, you go to the next ones. But because the book is so well organized in themes, it may be worth to just go in order. So now we're talking about God, now we're talking about the spirit world, now we're talking about family, now we're talking about suicide. And then you go so on and so forth. Okay? Cool. Now we're going to go back, going to stop our recording, because we're going to sing a song. So for those who are not familiar, so every week we are blessed with having songs sung by one of our members who is very talented playing the guitar. So if you'd like to experience that, today we're going to do a song called You Raise Me Up. But due to copyrights, we're just going to keep it to ourselves. So today sharing is caring, because I want this video to not be flagged, and that's usually what it is. But then we'll do our prayer and move on to the next phase. So that's why we encourage everybody to join us every Sunday at 8. It's every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until then, have a blessed day, friends. And join us next week with there'll be children's class on reincarnation and the egg hunt, and then lunch as well.